Anyway, I would just like to welcome everyone here for coming out to draft. It's fantastic to see you all. My name is Dominique. I'll be your MC for tonight. We have 4 fantastic speakers, which I'm super excited about. And first off, I'd just like to thank all of our sponsors. I'd like to thank BTI. I'd like to thank People for Bikes, who set this whole kind of format up for us, which is fantastic. And mostly I'd like to thank our amazing host, Tumbleroot. So remember to tip your servers. So first off tonight, I would like to introduce Eric from People for Bikes.
Hi, thank you all so much for coming off to our first draft here in New Mexico. We have done 102 meetups across the country at this point in 52 different cities. So this is a big moment for us here in New Mexico. Thank you, Preston and the BTI crew for hosting this great event. Thank you for the location. We couldn't imagine a better spot to hold one of these in. So, you'll soon have a little pin right here on the map. New Mexico proud. All right, cool. So we'll go on to the next slide here. And I'm here to talk to you just a little bit about our new program called RideSpot. So RideSpot is our new program to get infrequent, uncertain riders and everyone in between on their bikes more frequently in fun, safe, and effective places. So we have a rider and retailer tool, advocacy tool, to get more people involved in riding their bikes in those safe spots. We show great places to ride. We have event series to have all of your events listed on our platform. So all of those great announcements that you had tonight, we could host on RideSpot to make sure everybody in your community across all the social platforms will know where to meet up with other people to ride that are at similar levels of riding, and also be able to find non-bike related events like clinics and mechanic classes as well. And another final point to RideSpot is our 101 content. So how many people here were confused about the difference between a Presta and a Schrader valve when you first started riding a bike? Everybody should be raising their hands. So we have that difference. We have a bunch of different tutorials on RideSpot, and I'd love to show you just our quick video here on what RideSpot is.
Meet Sam. Sam used to watch her friends' adventures from the sidelines, until she learned about the new app, RideSpot, developed by People for Bikes. Before discovering RideSpot, finding a place to ride was a total pain in the... But now it's easy. RideSpot gave Sam the confidence she needed to brush the cobwebs off her bike and start riding. RideSpot's turn-by-turn audio directions mean that Sam can keep her eyes on the road and still know which way to go. The app gives Sam tools to ride on her own or join a group ride. She can even use RideSpot to find social events or workshops put on by her local bike shop. Sam enjoyed today's group ride so much that she wants to share her positive experience. With RideSpot, it's a breeze. Sam can publish a map of her route along with details and photos from the ride. Now other riders can follow Sam's map and enjoy the same route. Download RideSpot now to discover and share great bike rides.
All right, now I have a question for all of you. All right, please take out your phones and scan this image right here, and you'll be directed to our website so you can learn more about RideSpot and download the app. Thank you.
The first people we have are Yvette and Hernan. They are 2 artists who were born and raised in Santa Fe. Yvette Serrano is an artist and a graphic designer, and Hernan Gomez Chavez is a sculptor and a metalworker, and they've teamed up on a very cool project that they are going to tell you about.
The title of this piece is, and the work comes from the Spanish word querencia. Querencia comes from the word querer, meaning to love or desire. In common usage in Spanish, it's defined as a tendency to return to where one was raised. It's a place where one feels bonds of affection and belonging. Some of the questions you see here, we won't address right now, but they're very very significant to the work we're doing, and we can address some of them during the Q&A.
So we both lived in cities that are currently going through high rates of displacement. I lived in Denver for a little bit, and Adnan lived in Chicago. And so this got us thinking about housing in Santa Fe, our hometown. And as I'm sure many of you guys know, we're currently in a housing crisis that now exceeds a shortage of 5,000 units. And so last year I was partnered with the housing department here in Santa Fe, and I was learning about their community engagement efforts. And so this got me thinking about how we could bring the meetings and to the community versus the people going to them, which wasn't really working out the way they thought it would. Because we realized that there are a lot of obstacles that prevent folks from showing up, and that's things like child care, language barriers, work, and lack of transportation. And so we recognize, next slide, that transportation is also a housing issue and is a health issue, that they're not separate. And especially if we look at what the most accessible parts of town are, those are places like downtown and the rail yard. Not so much the south side, and this creates car dependency, which we have a chart here, and we have some handouts up in the front also, and this cycle is part of what we'd like to address through this project.
So our proposal is to create a mobile art project. We're going to be moving around the Santa Fe south side. We're going to be using a tricycle to pull a fabricated trailer designed to look like a mobile home. The trailer's walls are going to act as writing and drawing boards on which participants can write on. They're going to be asked to respond to a given prompt. What we're thinking is this is a way to address and better distill what housing, equity, and mobility mean for people on the south side. We've already spoken to organizers from Earth Care, Chamber Collective, and we're here today thanks to Bill Lane from BTI. I really appreciate the support for having us today. And as you can see in the last bullet point, what matters most to us is to be able to portray what it means to live in Santa Fe now, to create a dialogue around that. Next slide, please. So this project is a continuation of work I did while living in Chicago. It's a work about gentrification in Pilsen, neighborhood in Chicago's Lower West Side. The picture you see here is actually a white picket fence on wheels, which I moved around the neighborhood. The prompts given to the people were "Quién es mi vecino?" Who's my neighbor? So Spanish and English. People were asked to respond to those questions. I thought it was very important to do this work there because since the year 2000, over 10,000 people displaced from that neighborhood. Next slide, please. So some of the slides coming up, you can see different locations around the neighborhood and times where I took it back in 2017 when I did this project. This was in front of St. Pius Church on Ashland Avenue, which happened to be fairly central to dividing the gentrified area of Pilsen and what's still considered ungentrified. And if you can just keep moving through the slides to show people some of the other images. And if you can play that video, please, just to show people what's going on. And get an idea of the struggle of moving this thing around Chicago. I was very fortunate to get support from the Pilsen Alliance. They're a grassroots organization in Pilsen. They're about helping the community, and I'm still very grateful. The fence is actually with them now.
And to add to what Adnan just said, not only is this a continuation of that project that he did in Pilsen, but this also comes from us thinking about how we can engage the audience and actually get the participation from them in a different way, something that the city might not think of or do. And I recently heard a community organizer from Boyle Heights describe their approach as planning in the streets, and so we like that way of thinking about it. So here are some of the design ideas that we're considering.
So as I was mentioned, I'm a metal worker. I don't have too many. Go back to the previous slide. One before that. Going forward. Okay, so this is a rough sketch of what I envision to make. These ideas are going to be changing. I wanted to make something sturdy out of steel tubing that could be kind of moved around. So we're still working through some ideas right now, so we can move on to the next one. Kind of thinking about making some bracing for the top of the pitch. And then next slide.
Okay, and so we were recently gifted a trailer Santa Fe Art Institute. So that's going to be our starting point, and we're going to continue to build upon that. We're also considering what type of bicycle we're going to use to pull the trailer and how much weight we can actually use, or we can actually pull with that bike. And so we hope to answer those questions as we continue building. So thank you.
You see some design ideas and some images we've been looking at. And again, with our last slide, which is Danny DeVito.
I have Eric Ane, who's from the Santa Fe MPO, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which, yes, I had to Google. Eric moved to New Mexico in 1995 because of a Weekly World News fine news source. Cover story about Satan's skull found in New Mexico. Anyway, here he is.
Awesome, thanks. So I'm going to need your help in taking off the minutes for me, if you can keep me in. Well, let me, a caveat. My caveat is this: I work for the Santa Fe MPO, but everything I say tonight, and my attorney is in the audience today, and she advised me to state that whatever I say has nothing to do with anything of the opinions of the Santa Fe MPO. Very important. If these roads could talk, would we listen? If these roads could talk, would we consider how they impact us both individually and culturally? And then how the roads speak a specific language, and they do? And how they influence our behavior as human beings on the roadway. In the late 1800s, Robert Louis Stevenson made the quote, "Isn't it strange when a new road is developed, how it collects traffic?" How prescient of Robert Louis Stevenson before traffic engineers and what we see today have created the roads and the traffic. Think also about what Robert Louis Stevenson also wrote was the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's not a finer point on my entire presentation. That is it. Think about it, and I invite you, all of you, to think about the cognitive dissonance that goes between what we teach our youth and ourselves to behave amongst the road and the language of the roads and what they actually speak to us. Two very different things that we have to then try to figure out into the system. When Robert Louis Stevenson wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, think about Cerrillos, and what would Cerrillos have to say to us today? Cerrillos is the Mississippi Delta of the Santa Fe metro area. The Cerrillos Road starts back in the day, 100 years ago, at about a 37-foot width, and now in 2019, Cerrillos Road speaks to us at 160 feet of right-of-way. Cerrillos Road puts the right-of-way in right-of-way. Cerrillos Road is an example of the cognitive dissonance of doing two things. It's asking us to provide access, Cerrillos Road, to all the cool businesses along the way. At the same time, for a lot of us at peak hour, maybe we're trying to get through. Mobility versus accessibility, it is insane. And what does it do for us as drivers or pedestrians and or bicyclists? Do they ask us the fundamental questions of who we are and how we behave? The reflection of the roads as they speak to us today ask us to behave differently than we're asked in the expectation of a rational human being. A rational human being is supposed to stop at a red light. A rational human being is supposed to think twice before they move through an intersection. An intersection is designed, and let's look at the intersections of Cerrillos Road as a great example with their great lights and and the tributaries of the Mississippi is just fantastic. It is, what is a traffic light? Anybody want to tell me what the purpose of a traffic light is here?
Regulate behavior.
Set priorities for the next person driving. It is setting priorities. The purpose of a traffic light is not to provide safety. It is to provide a priority. Think about that from a cultural sort of value point of where we are moving through a system. Not only that, where is the traffic light positioned? Not that it could be positioned and much more anywhere else. Now look down here. You just slammed into my HUMV Humvee because you were looking at the traffic light when it was turning yellow. And Surreal's is begging, it's talking about move through my system as fast as you can, and at the same time, try to behave in a rational way. So what, if you listen to this, please, does the entire network of Santa Fe roads speak to us? So listen, please, in its cultural nuances, and that it's safety. And what it's saying when our roads are speaking to us right now is how you, as an individual, should behave in our network.
Next up in our speaker lineup, we have Peter Olson from Endurance Santa Fe. He's going to tell us why we would only want to go on an adventure with him once. You can just ask Eric, who was just up here, because he convinced him to do an ultramarathon and Eric got lost. Anyway, come on down.
I'm going to give you a little bit of background on why my everyday adventures are not for everyone. I've been very lucky to have had lots of experiences and have lived through most of them, all of them so far. Experiences like waking up under the stars to a lion's growl in the remote southern Ethiopia, or nearly dying of heat stroke running over and back across the Grand Canyon, or being 40 feet up off the deck and 21 feet, do the math, feet above my last piece of protection, climbing a crazy friction slab. I learned that everything will work out, everything will be okay, and that I have to and can do it myself. My parents were good examples. They taught me that if I wanted something done, I would have to do it myself. It was good to get help, but if I could, but I have to be prepared to be self-reliant. Some call this stubbornness or tenacity. I call it willpower. My parents moved our family of 7 to Africa. Within days of arriving, the Ethiopian military staged a coup and battled for control for the next 3 years. Just as I was getting used to the machine gun fire, my mom became paralyzed with Guillain-Barré syndrome. The Civil War had left the hospital depleted of oxygen. She couldn't breathe on her own, so she was evacuated by a U.S. military hospital plane to Greece and more oxygen tanks. My dad went with her, telling me he would be gone for a few days at most, leaving me temporarily in charge of my 4 younger siblings. He wasn't able to get back into the country for 5 months. I was 15 years old and trying to hold it together with sheer willpower. So what does this have to do with running ultramarathons? I've used all of these life experiences to build an ultramarathon in Santa Fe that one participant called Brutally Awesome. Endurance Santa Fe is a series of running races from 1 mile straight up a couple black diamond slopes to a 50-mile loop climbing over 11,000 feet, starting and finishing at Ski Santa Fe. It's a chance for runners to push the limit and then go a little bit more. I have found a lot of ways to use my willpower, like 12 and 24-hour mountain bike races on a single speed, unintentionally rollerblading 20 miles one time, or riding all of a 180-mile bike tour in 1 day. I endured third-degree chemical burns as a 13-year-old kid and was bedridden for the whole summer. All of these things helped me find a little something extra, something I didn't know I had, or something more that I could do. When finishers cross the finish line, Labor Day weekend, I hear from the runners. Usually they tell me they were cursing my name for the last hour and a half. That this race is the hardest thing that they've ever done. Then they say thank you and that they will come back next year. Sometimes they wait until they stop sobbing and recover a bit before they say that. Many of the runners have dug deep. They complete the race knowing that they've tested their physical, emotional, and mental limits, and everything worked out. Many in the running community don't know that Endurance Santa Fe was born when I broke my leg in half. See? I had aspirations to be a top ultra marathoner in my age group. That ended with a snap of my bones. So instead of running the world's greatest races, I decided to organize the world's greatest race. Recovering from 2 surgeries, installing 9 screws and a plate to put my ankle back together, the idea was launched, and hundreds of people now have a chance to test their previously known limits. Sometimes a run in the mountains is just a run in the mountains. Sometimes it leaves a mark. One of those days, I started a day-long date, climbing some 512s at El Rito, and then did a mountain bike ride on the way home. We had some daylight left, so we went for a run in the mountains. She wasn't able to take in enough calories during the day and bonked really hard. I had to carry her out. Everything worked out because she married me anyway. Everything worked out.
All right, for our final speakers tonight, we have Jan and Kim Bear. So, any idea why the number 36 would be important to these two? It happens to be the number of years they've been married and the average number of bike races they do a year. They're a little bit nuts. Anyway, they're world traveling adventurers, and they're here to tell us about their latest adventure in Tasmania.
So we just wanted to share what a great mountain bike adventure we had. It was not anything about endurance or the roads, but we just had a really fun time. So we wanted to put something together and share that. That's a Tasmanian devil. And we kind of got into this in December. We got an email from one of our friends that said, we have 2 openings. Would you be interested in going on a 10-day mountain biking tour of Tasmania? And we said, well, we haven't been to that part of the world. Yeah, let's try it. So that's how we kind of fell into it. And next one. So we ended up flying. The flying was the worst part. It's like 14 hours on the plane. So we flew into Hobart right here, and we were hooked up with 3 pros or 3 tour guide leaders. And the first day we ended up going on 3 amazing mountain bike rides. Next slide. So here is, we didn't take our bikes, so it was very enjoyable when traveling. And we were given full suspension bikes, and then this is the end of the first day and the group that we were with. So we were put with 13 other people who it turned out that we knew some of them from all over the country. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, it was great. It's really good. So we flew into Hobart, and we ended up in Tasmania is a state of Australia, which we found out. So we toured all around the island, and we ended up really loving this area here, which is the Blue Derby area.
So Hobart is again the capital of Tasmania. Tasmania is about the size of West Virginia, so it's a fairly good sized state, and they have gone through a lot in their history economically, and so they at one point, this is a small town we ended up in called Derby, which has actually a population of just over 200 people. But this town used to have a population of near 5,000 back when the tin mines were open in the early 1900s. Unfortunately, there was a large flood. The mine was wiped out. Several people were killed, and tin was not needed throughout the world anymore, so Derby kind of died. Next, Tasmania kind of got into forestry. So forestry was huge for years. They were selling wood chips to China, and then that kind of died out. So it ended up that poor Derby had 170 some inhabitants and nothing economically to really hold them together. So in 2014, they decided that mountain biking was a way that they could bring back the economy. So the two counties, which would be our counties that are called districts in Tasmania, got together and along with the state and the federal government got a grant for about $2 million and decided to put in mountain bike trails. So in 2 years, they put in 80 kilometers of mountain bike trails. And they put them in this, around this small town. They have free camping. They have restrooms, showers, restaurants, no hotels. And now they draw 30,000 people to this town last year.
So they have something for kids, they have something for families, they have this great trail system that is a green trail, a blue trail, double diamond, and just diamond. So everything's very, very well marked. And we were so impressed and so inspired by the riding out there.
And by what they've done. I mean, so this year in March, they had the second stage of the World Enduro Series. They have other large events planned. And they think they're going to have 40 to 45,000 people visiting Derby in the next year or two. They already have scheduled 60 more kilometers of trail to open by December.
Next slide. So this is a video that shows, so you get a feel for it.
If you haven't heard of Derby, we forgive you. Things have been pretty quiet in this tiny northeastern Tasmanian town for the past little while. Well, since 1948 really, when the Brothers Mine closed down. Once a thriving centre of 3,000 people, Derby's now home to a couple of hundred characters, 2 pubs, and a whole stack of ridiculously good mountain bike trails. Over the past 12 months, some of Australia's best trail builders have been very busy in the rocky terrain around town, carving in the first stage of the Blue Derby Trails, a development that's going to put Derby on the world mountain bike map. It's an incredible place to ride. Tin miners did their best to ravage the landscape, and the Tasmanian wilderness has fallen back, consuming the remnants of industry that's scattered through the bush. One moment you're ripping up and over immense tracts of rubble which the miners hand-dug from the earth. The next you're in a fern-filled gully that feels like it's never been touched by man, or rolling through vast canyons. And World Trail have done their best to take you on a tour of the highlights, both natural and man-made, weaving it all together with effortless flow. At just an hour and a half from Launceston, Derby is close enough for a day trip, but it's better enjoyed as part of an exploration of the whole region. Stay a few nights and get a feel for the character of this place. It's a cool little town, with camping right on the Ringarooma River. Over the next 2 years, the Blue Derby network is going to quadruple in size, ultimately reaching over 80 k's of trail, including a mammoth all-day epic descent from the Blue Tier back to Derby via Wellborough and its famous hotel. It was way back in 1929 when the Cascade Dam burst, killing 12 people and beginning a slow decline to Derby. So it's exciting to know that now, over 80 years later, mountain biking has helped bring a new vibrancy back to Derby. The Blue Derby Trails are just another great reason to bring the mountain bike to Tassie, and we can't wait to get back here and ride again and again as the trails grow over the coming years.
That video was made a couple years ago, and the Blue Tier Trail was already open. That's 26 kilometers, all one way. All their trails are one direction, unidirectional, so no issues with other people riding. They're all marked well, and it's just a great experience. And if you could kind of think about what Santa Fe could do with the great variety of terrain we have here and a little bit of money. It would just be amazing. We could have another Derby.
All right, well, I really, really want to thank all of the speakers who volunteered to speak. It was awesome. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out because it's fantastic to see all of you. Again, thanking our sponsors, BTI, People for Bikes. Don't forget to get a ride spot. And Tumbleroot for being fantastic hosts. And all the volunteers who helped make this happen. I also would like to remind everyone to go out and enjoy the rest of Bike Week's events. There's a ton of cool stuff happening, and I'm just so happy to see this many people that love bikes in Santa Fe. It wasn't like this a long time ago. But anyway, cheers to all of you, and thank you very, very much. And now you may go talk to your new friends you made earlier.